help you bring your mission to life. Here's Mindy Audlin and Stacy Collins.
We all know it's important to start within, right? Well, in this episode, we're going to use that internal awareness to strengthen our relationships, to build our teams, and to put our mission into action out there in the community. I am Mindy Audlin here with
Stacy Collins.
Hi, Stacy. And together we are headed into the home stretch of our series together with one of my favorite topics, service and outreach. So this is how you put your feet on your prayers, right, Stacy?
That's exactly right, Mindy. I'm excited to be here so that I can share my experience as a small group program leader at Unity of Houston and share with you all a little bit about how we've put these ideas into practice in a way that has really impacted the broader community.
Well, and we would love to hear, obviously, we're going to be telling a lot of stories today. And so I can't wait to hear your stories, Stacy. I have going on like 8 years of stories to tap into, which is going to be really fun. But we really would love to hear your stories as well. So if you have been engaged in small group service projects, if you've done community service as part of a small group, just want to give you an early invitation to call in because we would love to hear from you. So Stacy, how do they do that? How do they call in?
It's so easy, Mindy. All they have to do is call 816-251-3555. And yes, we would certainly love to hear your stories. We know you have good ones. We know you have good ones.
Yes, there are lots of great ones out there. And, if you don't tell us, we don't know about them. So I can't wait to hear what's going on for all of you. Just as a point of review, so last week was kind of a wrap up on taking a holistic view of what we call engagement strategy. So just as a way to review where we've been, we looked at ways to build a system and a strategy for growing a mission-centric organization. And that starts the moment you connect with someone that you think would be a great fit for your community. And it continues through, getting them engaged in a small group or engaged in your Sunday service, teaching them about, our core teachings and helping them apply that in their life, all the way through to having them step into a leadership role and then having others follow in their footsteps. So that's what we did last week in our last episode. So Stacy, have you been thinking about it? Have you been reflecting on it?
I've been reflecting. Oh yes, I've been reflecting. I think the number one thing for me that I was reflecting about was, yes, it's so important. And we've talked in some of the episodes about what it means to really welcome people and to create that and how to stay in touch with them. But it doesn't just stop there. We really get to be with people on their journey as they get more and more engaged in the community, and that there are actually very real, tangible steps that you can take to make sure that you're finding places for them to fit in, places for them to explore and engage, and to eventually step into leadership roles, whatever that looks like for them, but to really become partners with you in community building. And we can build that through following these engagement.
Yeah, I love that because it's a great point that we're usually very good at, we have our welcome team and once they walk in the door, we're usually really good at welcoming them and greeting them. We have our greeters. And then once someone is on the leadership end, once they're on the board or once they're a chaplain or on a leadership team, we're usually pretty good about supporting those teams. But it seems like there's sort of this gap in the middle of, from being welcomed and encouraging them to join to, getting plugged in. And this is really about closing those gaps. And I, as if you've been listening to us at all, we are both huge fans of small groups. And one of the reasons is because it does bridge that gap. It creates a stepping stone along the way to be able to fill those gaps and really, as you said, support people at every step in their spiritual journey. I love looking at things holistically. And one of the metaphors that comes to me often particularly when I think about building culture, and this was one of the first episodes we did, I think it was episode 2, was about creating an engaged culture. And we talked about what we call the 5 disciplines, like the 5 things that are present in an engaged culture. And what I think about mission as kind of being like the race, it's like, here's the journey, here's where we are, here's where we want to go. And, let's go on this journey together. But culture, I really think of as the breath that moves us there, and if we want to get from here to there, obviously we got to be breathing, right? So just as to take a really simple analogy, I think of the breathe in, and I'm going to tie into some things we talked about when we talked about culture. The breathe in is really about that communion practice, which is prayer and meditation and, that deep connection with spirit. That's the breathe in. It fills us up, and connection and making friends and, being part of a fun, engaging community. That's a breath in, like that fills us up. And I think in our movement, we're very good at breathing in. I think we're very good at meditation and prayer. I think we're very good at our potlucks. Love those potlucks. We love to have fun together. We love to connect. We love being together. I think we're very good at the inhale. But what today is about is that exhale. And if you don't exhale, eventually you're just going to pass out, right? You got to have both. You got to have a way to express that fullness. And in our culture model, if you go back to that episode, we talk about compassion and community. So compassion is allowing that fullness to express out to other members of our small groups, other members of our spiritual community. And today we're talking about being so full that we have an overflow to share beyond the walls of our spiritual community, so that we can be bringing our mission to life in the greater community, making a difference outside the walls of our church. So I really see this as this whole holistic approach to member engagement, creating healthy cultures. Like, it's all connected, and it's as fundamental as breathing in and breathing out. Let's fill ourselves up, let's fill our cups, and then fill them to overflow, fill them so that we have something to give. And that is that teaching of abundance. So today we're going to talk about service and outreach and why it's so important to have these, not as something that's nice to do, but because we have to exhale. In order to be healthy, we have to also exhale. We have to let all that good out into the world in a tangible way, and service projects are the way to do that. So, Stacy, I know your ministry has been doing the SpiritGroups model, where service is a component. We do service projects as part of every series. So just as a big picture, like, what have you seen? What have you noticed in terms of how integrating community service into your ministry practice has helped the health of the ministry overall?
Yeah. So in part of our mission statement, it actually, the final line, our purpose statement, it says that we nurture and empower each other and transform our lives so that we may serve the world. And that's exactly what you're talking about. We experience that transformation, all that good nurturing and empowering others. And then what do we do? What do we do with it? And it's for a purpose, and that is so that we may be of service to others as well. And so I've really seen, when you have a vital small group program, and we'll talk more about the logistics of how each of the groups take care of their own service project, you suddenly take all the limits off of any service project you thought that the church could possibly do. Oh, well, we've got to find the volunteers and dream up what we should do and pick the date. No. When you have small groups, they are each in charge of their own project. They can make it as big or as small as they want to, although I say there's no such thing as too small of a service project, as long as you're in that action. And so I've really seen people take control of their own way that they want to be in service. It's something that speaks to them, and it's so powerful when it's like that.
Oh, I love that. And we're going to talk, as you said, we're going to talk more about the logistics of how you do that and how we integrate it into small groups. But I've been there where, when I first started in ministry, and I think it was like my second year in ministry, and I had the little knock on the door from someone who had the suggestion for the suggestion box, like, Mindy, wouldn't it be great? What if we could do? Couldn't we? It was really more about, I think the church needs to do more in terms of outreach. And I wholeheartedly agreed. I said, that would be fantastic. Would you do that? And of course, then the person kind of backed out of my office and I didn't see them again. It was one of those things. What they were really saying is, Mindy, I think you should create an outreach program. And for me, as a new minister, a new spiritual leader, and one in a community that was growing very rapidly, I had no bandwidth to create an outreach program. As much as I loved the idea, I didn't have the bandwidth. And what I love about what we're talking about today is this is a system and a structure for getting out into the community, bringing your people together in a really meaningful way to show what does it look like when these principles are alive in us, not just in our heads, but in our feet. What does it look like when we are out serving people, and it isn't something that is going to tax your senior staff? In fact, that's one of the things that I found is when I'm working with new churches, one of the things that we do that keeps us small is we try to control these things. So I'm going to just like put that challenge out to any of you who are thinking in your head already, oh, I know what we should do, and you're thinking about the whole church. So I'm going to challenge you to set that idea aside and to really open up to what's possible when you empower your congregation to bring the mission to life in a way that reflects their understanding of the mission, because that's really what it is. So I'm going to do a quick review. I know I already kind of went through this, but the 5 spiritual disciplines: communion, which, as I said, is prayer and meditation. It's that connection with the divine. Connection is building friendships. That's an important part of your culture. Compassion is being there for each other, knowing that someone's got your back when you're having a bad day. Community is taking the teachings outside of your spiritual community out into the greater community. And challenge is, we don't want anyone to plateau. When you plateau, when you stop getting something out of it, when you stop growing, why go? So how do you create a challenging culture? Not in a way, I think of it kind of like the rubber band. Like, how do you stretch people enough so that there's growth and change, but not stretch them so much that it snaps? So what's the right amount of challenge, and how do we create that into our culture so that people really are constantly stretching and growing? So here we're going to kind of break down what the model looks like and how it works through small groups and how it contributes to all these different elements of a culture. First and foremost, everything that we do in terms of culture is all designed to help us fulfill a mission. So first and foremost, we talked in our first episode about mission and how when we are talking about mission-centric ministry, what we're not talking about is what the minister is supposed to do for the congregation. What we're talking about is what the members of the congregation are here to do in the world. So that when we talk about mission, this is not a job description for your minister or your staff. This is what you need to do for us. A true mission-driven organization has, a North Star, as we talked about. We have that idea that we are all rallying behind to bring that into the world. So I like using the example of transforming lives. It's very simple. You could say, yes, the minister is there to transform the lives of the members of the congregation, because obviously you're coming to a transformational message, but that's not where it ends. We start within, and then we breathe in, we experience that mission, and then from that fullness, we're able to take that mission out beyond our inner circles out into the world. So the mission is for all people. Now, what I love about service projects in small groups is this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you can go to your group leaders and say, okay, friends, it's service project week. What are your ideas? And to not give them a to-do list, to not do it for them. Oh, and I know this is hard for some of us, not to do it for them, to be there as support, but to really empower them. Like, what does it look like to take these teachings, to take these ideas out into the world? So Stacey, anything you want to add about your mission and the service projects and how those service projects are supporting the overarching mission?
Yes. So, it's like you said, we really ask the groups, okay, it's service project time. What do you think? What does it look like for you to be transforming your life and then taking that love out into the world? And when like you said, it's so tempting to say, well, you could do X, Y, and Z. And now I do that. I will offer some ideas, but in big, bold letters, it says, these are some ideas of what people have done before. Please, whatever is organic in your group, whatever comes up that somebody already has a passion about, that's what I want the groups to do. And they never fail to surprise me, some of the things that they come up with. So really, my theory is let them come up with the ideas, because otherwise I'm limiting them. If I just say, well, this is what Stacy thinks is a good idea, the church thinks are good ideas for service project. No, you'll be amazed at what people come up with if you just kind of let them do that.
I love that. And that open space is really what helps develop the leadership skills, right? If you give them a list and say, here's what you're supposed to do for your service project. And this is what, a lot of churches, this is what we used to do, is we would say, okay, we're going to do a clothing drive, or we're going to do a food drive, or we're going to do this, this, this. And we would organize the whole thing, and people would bring their cans of food or their donations or whatever it is. But the organization was happening by the staff, and it became, it's like we had to sort of monitor how much can we actually coordinate given the bandwidth that we have. So this is, if that's what you've done in the past, then I encourage you to step into a complete paradigm shift and really open the door and ask your small groups. So really you're empowering the leader to go to their group and have the group decide, what do you want to do? Now, I've seen some groups where you'll have somebody in a group who is already passionate about a nonprofit or a project, or they're going to run in a charity run, or they have connections already with nonprofit organizations. And it's just a matter of, is this something that the whole group wants to do? So you may find, in fact, you may discover that you've got connections in the community through your congregation that you didn't even know that you had, because you create this opportunity for people to give and to serve. So do you have some stories?
Well, what that came to my mind too is another thing that happens, because the way it's structured, that the service project, you kind of begin having those conversations maybe after the group has already met 3 or 4 times, and there's some really deep sharing. You plant the seed earlier on, but by that point you really know each other's interests, and you really know what's coming alive for people in their own lives. And I had a really cool experience in a small group where one of the members was a teacher at a nursing college, and their funding had been cut. And one of the things that she was really concerned about is the nursing students, they used to have this opportunity for them to do practice interviews when they graduated before they went out in the job market. And that part had been cut. And she was saying, it's so valuable for them. And so we said, well, what if we did that? What if you gave us the questions, we went into the college one day, set it up for the students that were interested. And none of us had done that before, but we practiced and we went in, and we had such great feedback from the students, and you could tell that they were so touched that we took the time to spend with them. And it was a blessing to us too, to see these beautiful people that want to go out and be in service in the medical field. And I would have never dreamed that. That's another one I would have said. I would never have dreamed that up, to offer that as something people to do. It was something that was alive and active in our group particularly, and that made it even more special.
Wow, I get this whole episode is just giving me goosebumps because I love seeing, this is how Spirit works. So if we can let go and let Spirit work through our congregation, it is amazing the things that can show up, and we are able to do so much more than if a senior staff is saying, here's what you do. Now, I have through Spirit Groups, I have created templates, and I'm not at all opposed to a list of ideas. I think ideas are great, especially, and I find this, Stacy, because I work with churches in all different levels of, they're brand new to doing small group ministry, or they've done it a different way, or some churches I've worked with now for 7 or 8 years. So they kind of have it down. And when I see new churches go through this for the first time, so it's usually their fall series, and they're going through it for the first time, and they get to the service projects, and they go to their group leaders and they say, okay, your task is to organize a service project. And I love you said, there's no small service projects, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to organize a marathon or do a yard sale. Right. I mean, you can, we've had people that, what came to mind as you were sharing that story is we had a small group where there was a gentleman in another group whose wife was ill, and this gentleman loved his garden. Everybody had been to his yard. They loved his yard. He loved his garden, and he was so busy caring for his wife that he had not had a chance to tend to his garden. And so our group said, well, what if we go and mow the grass and pull the weeds and, help him out in the garden for a day? So it doesn't have to be a big thing. But sometimes when you're first getting started, when you're given the task of create a service project, people are like, I don't know, what could we do? So having a sheet with ideas is, it gives people a place to start. I have seen churches have, and my template that I had has basically 3 different categories. So the first category was, if you want to do something at the church, great. Here are some things, some projects that could be done at the church. Maybe you need a closet organized, or a room painted, or a garden weeded, or something like that. So here's some ideas. The key is, if you suggest anything for your physical location or for your church itself, anything that is internally focused, to make sure it is absolutely clear that that is not required. It's just an idea, and it's just if you want to, because otherwise it starts to feel a little manipulative. It starts to feel like we're doing a service project so that we can get you to come volunteer more. Right? So I would say, if you are tempted to jump in and sort of control this piece and say, this is what we're all going to do, to consider letting that go. You will be so glad you did. It's so much easier. So it may be that you give them a list of, here's some ideas, simply some ideas. Let me know if you want to get involved in any of these, so I can help you get connected with the right resources. Then I would also put a section that says, here are some community resources. So you may want to do a little research and say, okay, here's the United Way in our town. You can go there, and they have volunteer opportunities. I had one small group who simply went online and Googled service opportunities in our town, and they found it was like a colon cancer marathon. They helped volunteer at different checkpoints to hand water to the runners along the way, and they raised all this money for research for colon cancer. And so one of my favorite pictures in the Facebook group is they posted a picture of them inside this giant inflated colon. You just can't reenact those in any other way. So they did that just because they Googled it. They just Googled service opportunities. The other thing that you might consider is, I know through Unity, I'm not certain for Centers for Spiritual Living. I encourage anyone involved in a CSL community that has resources, post them in our Spirit Groups Facebook group. That's it, facebook.com/spiritgroups. We'd love to hear what resources you have. But I know at Unity, there's actually a staff person who has community outreach resources, and you can reach out and say, when I last spoke to them, they had all kinds of booklets that you could put for caregivers, and booklets for, all kinds of different things that you could put in hospital waiting rooms, that you could, distribute around town in ways that would help people, when they need a little spiritual support. So if you want to do something that is sort of thinking globally about the movement, there are opportunities for that as well. So endless possibilities. And I also want to pop in here that we're not just talking about physical service projects. So when COVID came around and everyone was like, I can't do service anymore, I'm stuck at home, we got to Zoom. No, of course you can still do service. And so, Stacey, maybe talk about that a little bit. What happened with COVID, and how did your service projects change or adapt to that? And still perhaps adapting to what's going on.
Right. So, like you said, it was like, oh, we can't go out. And, even though some people felt that safe enough, and with places at the food bank, and we do some outreach in our neighborhood with Unity of Houston, a food bank distribution right there on our campus, and some people felt safe. But of course, we wanted to have virtual options, and Google is our friend here. And we found one of the things we found was adoptanursinghome.com, and that's specific to Texas, and it will align you with some needs in a nursing home in your area, and you tell them how many people are in your group, how much time you can spend, and they will tell you what do they need. So maybe care packages or cards written. We had a lot of people doing things like that, writing notes of appreciation to teachers, sending things to assisted living homes, adult assisted living homes, if they knew someone in their group that had a loved one in a home that they hadn't been able to visit, and that was particularly touching. So the sky's the limit too with virtual ones. And now what we're seeing is that we have groups that have some in-state and some out-of-state members. So it's about finding a project that maybe some of the group does gather and put together some care packages, and the people from out-of-state send something in, and then they're all on Zoom while they're doing it. They're coming up with some really creative ways to do it. And so I'm learning from the hosts, actually, what they're coming up with.
I love that because it really speaks to how you are developing leadership, how you are creating innovative problem solvers and empowering people to come up with their own solutions. On a similar note, I saw one church that did as a service project, they had a younger group that was very comfortable with technology. For their service project, they reached out to all the people in the community that weren't joining on Zoom to make sure they had the technology to be able to stay connected through the pandemic. And things like that happened because of the service projects, because we created that space for people to be looking for, the compassion piece. How do we take care of each other? And at the same time, how do we reach out to our greater community? And that there is always a way. So I love all the creative ideas. And we would love to hear from you as well. So if you have some things that you've done that you'd like to share, I encourage you to give us a call. Cece, you've got the number. What do they do?
I do. Can you call? What, 816-251-3555. That's 816-251-3555. And we would love to hear your stories about service projects. That they just feel good to tell them, don't they, Mindy? And
They do.
it's a blessing to everybody.
I love this. And we love your pictures. We love your stories. And we would love to connect with you. So give us a call and be a part of this episode. We're talking about service projects, outreach, and why that's so important for your organizational health. More when we come back in just a moment on The Leading Edge.